What if the financial advice you have been following your entire life, the advice your parents trusted, your teachers repeated, and the internet keeps confirming, is actually the very reason you are still stuck? What if the system that was supposed to help you build wealth was quietly designed to keep you manageable, predictable, and financially dependent? Before you dismiss that, stay with me for the next few minutes, because what you are about to hear might be the most uncomfortable and the most important financial conversation you have ever had. Meet Danielle. She's 34, lives in Columbus, Ohio, and on the surface, she's doing everything right. She shows up early at work, skips vacations, clips coupons, and meticulously tracks her savings. From the outside, it looks like discipline and responsibility in action. But here's the catch. Every month, despite her careful planning, she's barely keeping up. She isn't getting ahead. She isn't building real wealth. She's surviving, just a little more organized than those around her. Danielle isn't lazy, and she isn't foolish. She's stuck, and the rules she's following were designed to look exactly like a plan. Now, let's talk about William. William is 41, lives in Toronto, drives a modest car, has never carried a credit card balance, and has been putting $200 a month into a savings account since he was 26. He calls himself financially responsible. His bank calls him a loyal customer. And that right there is the first clue something is deeply wrong. Most people believe that being good with money means spending less, saving more, avoiding debt at all costs, and waiting until they feel secure before making any financial moves. Those beliefs are not crazy. They come from real places, from parents who lived through hard times, from systems that reward caution, from a culture that treats financial risk like personal failure. But here is the uncomfortable truth, and I need you to sit with this. The advice that sounds the most responsible is often the advice that costs you the most over your lifetime. Let us break it down piece by piece, because each one of these ideas sounds intelligent on the surface, and that is exactly what makes them so dangerous. The first piece of advice almost everyone hears is this: save more money. It sounds airtight. Of course you should save. Saving is discipline. Saving is responsible. Saving is what your grandmother told you, and your grandmother was a good person. But here's what nobody tells you about saving. A savings account is not a wealth-building tool, it's a parking lot. In most traditional savings accounts across the US and Canada, the interest you earn is lower than the annual rate of inflation. What that means in practical terms is that the money sitting in Danielle's savings account is actually losing purchasing power every single year she leaves it there. She's working hard to put money in a container that is slowly leaking. Saving money is not the same as growing money, and confusing the two is one of the most expensive mistakes ordinary people make. While she feels responsible, inflation is quietly eroding the value of every dollar sitting in that account. She's not growing wealth, she's slowly losing it while believing she's doing everything right. The second piece of advice is cut your expenses. Now this one is particularly seductive because it feels like action. You cancel the streaming subscription, you bring lunch to work, you stop getting coffee from the cafe. You feel productive, you feel disciplined, and you are, genuinely. But here's the math that nobody puts in front of you. There's a floor to how much you can cut, but there's no ceiling to how much you can earn. The ceiling of cutting expenses is always zero. You can only cut so much before there's nothing left. But the ceiling on income growth is virtually limitless. If William cuts every unnecessary expense from his life, he might free up $300 a month. That is meaningful. But if William learned how to grow his income by $300 a month, he would be in the same position financially, and he would still have his coffee and his life. The obsession with cutting expenses keeps people focused on scarcity. It trains your brain to think in terms of less rather than training it to think in terms of more. Wealthy people are not wealthy because they stopped buying lattes. They are wealthy because they started thinking differently about how money moves. The third piece of advice is the one that sounds the most virtuous of all. Avoid all debt. This one is tricky because bad debt is genuinely dangerous. Credit card debt at 22% interest is a trap. Payday loans are predatory. Nobody's arguing with that. But here's what the blanket advice to avoid all debt doesn't tell you. Debt is a tool, and like any tool, the outcome depends entirely on how you use it. There's a profound difference between debt that drains you and debt that builds you. A woman named Patricia in Atlanta used a small business loan, which is debt, to start a skincare line out of her kitchen. 5 years later, that line generates 6 figures annually. A man named Trevor in Vancouver leveraged a mortgage, which is also debt, to purchase a duplex. He lives in one unit and rents the other, and his tenant essentially pays his housing costs every month. The wealthy have never been afraid of debt. They are strategic about it. There is an enormous difference between debt that takes money out of your pocket every month and debt that puts money into it. Until you understand that difference, you will keep treating all debt like the enemy, and in doing so, you will keep surrendering one of the most powerful financial tools available to you. The fourth piece of advice is the one that shaped an entire generation. Go to school, get a good job, and stay safe. Now, education has real value, and a stable job is nothing to dismiss. But the underlying message of this advice is this: trade your time for money, do it consistently, follow the rules, and security will follow. The problem is that a job, no matter how good it is, has a fundamental design flaw. It caps you. There are only so many hours in a day, and there is only so much a single employer will pay for them. A man named Jonathan in Chicago spent 12 years climbing the corporate ladder in finance. Smart guy, hardworking. He earned a good salary, but every raise he received was a percentage of a number someone else controlled. His ceiling was set by someone else's decision. Meanwhile, the company he worked for turned his expertise, his relationships, and his hours into a return for their shareholders. Jonathan was building someone else's wealth while receiving a portion of it as a wage. That is not a criticism of working. It is an observation about where working fits in the larger picture of building real, lasting financial independence. The job is not the destination, it's the starting line, and treating it like the finish line is one of the most expensive mistakes in financial psychology. The fifth and perhaps most psychologically powerful piece of advice is this: wait until you feel ready before investing. Wait until you have more money. Wait until you understand it better. Wait until the market is less volatile. Wait. And people wait. They wait for years, sometimes decades. Every year you delay is a year of compound growth you can never get back. And in those years, something invisible and devastating happens. Compounding works against them instead of for them. A woman named Stephanie in Houston started investing $200 a month at age 25. Her friend, Lisa, who lived in the same city and made the same income, waited until she felt ready and started at 35. By the time they both reached 65, Stephanie had nearly 3 times more money, not because she was smarter or wealthier or more disciplined, but simply because she started. The cost of waiting is not just financial, it is psychological, because the longer you wait, the more waiting feels normal, and the more starting feels dangerous. Now, why do people follow this advice so religiously even when it is not working? This is where we need to talk about the psychology underneath the behavior, because this is not just about money, it is about how we are wired. Human beings are biologically programmed to avoid loss more than they pursue gain. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it is one of the most well-documented patterns in behavioral finance. What this means practically is that the fear of losing $100 is more powerful than the excitement of gaining $100. So when someone says, invest your money, the brain does not hear opportunity, it hears risk, it hears loss, it hears danger. And so doing nothing, keeping the money safe, following the conventional advice, feels psychologically comfortable, even when it is economically damaging. There's also a deeper layer here that most financial conversations never touch. The systems around you, the financial institutions, the credit industry, even some corners of the education system, are not designed to make you wealthy. They are designed to make you a reliable participant. Banks make money when you keep money in low-interest accounts. Lenders make money when you carry balances. Employers make money when you show up, work hard, and do not leverage your skills elsewhere. None of this is a conspiracy. It's just the honest reality of how the system is structured. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here is the shift in perspective that changes everything. Wealth is not built by playing it safe. Money is not something you hoard. Money is a tool you deploy. Every dollar is a potential worker. Wealth is built by playing it smart.
Those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is everything. Playing it safe means optimizing for comfort and certainty in the short term. Playing it smart means accepting calculated, educated, strategic discomfort in the service of long-term freedom.
The people who build real wealth, not inherited wealth, not lottery wealth, but built wealth, consistently do a few things differently. First, they think in terms of ownership. They're not just trying to earn money, they are trying to own things that generate money. That means stocks, which are ownership stakes in businesses. It means real estate, which is ownership of assets that appreciate and produce income. It means businesses, which are engines that create value independently of how many hours you personally work. The average person rents their time and tries to save what is left. The wealthy buy assets and let those assets generate income. Second, they leverage time instead of just spending it. When a person named Robert in Denver builds a rental property portfolio, he eventually reaches a point where his properties are managed by a property manager, and the income arrives whether he works that day or not. His time has been multiplied. Compare that to a person who earns $60,000 a year at a salary, where if they stop working, the income stops instantly. The difference is not how much they earn, the difference is whether their money works independently of their time. Third, they think long. Not long as in comfortable, long as in strategic. They make decisions based on where they want to be in 10 or 20 years, not based on what feels safe this Tuesday. So what do you actually do with this? Here is where we get practical. The first shift is simple but profound. Start thinking in terms of assets versus expenses. Every time you spend money, ask yourself whether this purchase is moving money away from you forever, or whether it is creating something that will bring money back. The second shift is to focus on growing your income, not just managing your expenses. That could mean developing a skill that commands higher pay. It could mean starting something small on the side. It could mean learning about investing so that your money starts doing some of the earning. The third shift is the most important. Get financially educated and do it now. Not when you feel ready, not when you have more money, now. Because financial literacy is the foundation underneath every other wealth strategy, and the longer you operate without it, the longer the system operates on you. And this is the part where I want you to feel something, not just think something, because there is a cost to staying where you are that most people never fully face. Every year you follow advice that does not move you forward is a year you cannot get back. Think about William. He will reach 60 with a modest savings account and a quiet sense of frustration he cannot quite name because he followed the rules and the rules did not deliver the life he imagined. Think about Danielle, who will keep clipping coupons and living tightly and calling herself responsible while the gap between her and genuine financial freedom stays exactly where it is. This is not their fault, but it is their responsibility to see it. You have more options than the conventional advice has shown you. You always did. The question is whether you are willing to sit with that discomfort long enough to start doing something different. Here is the closing thought I want you to leave you with, and I want you to really think about this one. The system does not need you to be rich. It needs you to be predictable. It needs you to save where it profits, to borrow where it earns, to work where it benefits. The moment you start thinking like an owner instead of an employee, like an investor instead of a saver, like someone building a financial future instead of just managing a financial present, you become something the system did not plan for. And that is exactly where your freedom begins. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want you to answer this in the comments below. Which of these pieces of advice have you been following without ever questioning? Was it save more, avoid all debt, wait until you feel ready? Tell me, because the conversation that happens in that comment section might be more valuable than anything else you hear today. And if this opens something up for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for the people you love is hand them a new way of seeing the world.
Thank you so much for watching all the way through. If this video gave you a new perspective on money or made you stop and question the advice you've been following, go ahead and hit that like button. It lets me know this content is making a difference. And don't keep this to yourself. Share the video with someone who could benefit from a fresh perspective on money. They will thank you later. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so that you won't miss other powerful and interesting videos on this channel. I also want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. Which advice have you been following blindly, and what's your biggest takeaway from today? Wishing you a day full of clarity, courage, and inspired action, and I hope to see you in the next video.